Hi everyone. So I want to talk a bit more about the technical etude and some very specific things in regards to flute, or really just in general for the etude, to kind of help give you that last bit of knowledge you'll need to work on this. For starters, I would practice this relatively slow. Make sure your fingers are moving very efficiently. It's important to not try to work on something faster than you're ready for. So even if you have worked on this before, slow it down. Try about quarter note equals 50 or 60 first. And then once you have that down really solid where you could play it easily and not make really any mistakes, start slowly cranking up the speed. That's going to make sure you're really comfortable and ready for all the upcoming stuff. Next, I would recommend not using your thumb B-flat fingering for a lot of the etude. We have there's only one or two B naturals in the piece, but my general rule of thumb is B naturals and B flats. Having to slide between fingerings is not the best thing to do. That doesn't mean you can't. I may do that myself, but I think it's important to be very consistent in what you do. And if you're having to worry about B naturals at all, then I think it's important to just make it to where your 1-in-1 fingering is your go-to option for this. Next, let's talk about articulation. So the articulation should be light and crispy is kind of how I think of it, or even bouncy. You don't want the articulation too heavy, or otherwise it's going to sound very overpowering. So let me just play for you the very first opening measure, and I would go for a lighter articulation. So I thought about very on the tip of my tongue, very light. Da 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 da. Again, very light. You don't have to put too much air behind the tongue itself. Just think about letting the air move through. I would practice this in general in just 4-bar phrases. So I would start a little bit at a time and go from measure 4 to measure 1, and then I'll make sure I'm doing all the things we just talked about earlier. Really clear fingerings, nice crisp articulations, and make sure you're following dynamics. Doing that and then just going 4 bars at a time means that you have really easy to digest chunks, essentially, is how I think of it. And it's important to just do this in small parts versus trying to tackle the whole. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of trouble being consistent throughout these registers. My next piece of advice is to pay attention to your accidentals. In the technical etude, there are so many accidentals where we go from having F naturals to F sharps, to A naturals, to B naturals, and so on and so forth. So if you are one to forget about your key signature and you have trouble switching back and forth between accidentals, put a little star above it, circle it. Sometimes people respond better to color. You can highlight it, whatever you have to do for yourself to make sure you are easy to go back and forth between these. My biggest focus would be measure 1 to measure 2, where you start off with the F sharp in beat 3, and then at the very beginning of beat 1, you have an F natural. Make sure those are different. Another piece of advice for this, which is covered in my rhythm video, but take a look at measure 7, where we have a dotted 8th 16th note. Here, make sure you're really paying attention to the note and the rhythm counting. I'm going to count it for you starting in measure 7. 1 ta te ta 2 te 3 te 4 ta 1 and. So make sure you're very confident in that beat 4. That shows up a few other times throughout the piece, and it's very easy to tell when it's not played right. If we were to subdivide it, 1 ta te ta 2 te 3 te 4 ta 1. You want to make sure you're getting it right on the 4th 16th note. 1 te 3 4 ta 1. That's going to really help solidify that rhythm. Make sure you can do that slow before you try to speed that up. My last piece of advice is for measure 20, where you have a descending run going up to a high G and then later to a high A flat. I think it's important to let the air do the work versus trying to squeeze the note out. So I'm going to play measure 20 for you. So I let the air do all the work. It's very important to make sure your lips are not too close together. That happens whenever we have our teeth too close together in our mouth. So think about opening up your mouth. By opening up the jaw inside my mouth and keeping my lips closed, you can actually see the difference. So elongate the mouth. That's going to help keep the air nice and open and even. And then whenever you're going to the upper registers, the notes are going to be so much more resonant and sounds way better. So I would focus on playing beat 2 first. Go for the high G. See if you can just hit it very consistently. I would do what's called a breath attack, where you hit the G without tonguing and without resetting the face muscles, and just do that a few times. If you can do that really consistent without cracking or missing the note, that means you're ready to move on. So then you can go. Then finally, as you can tell, I'm not having you slur these notes right now. What's more important is to make sure your lip muscles are prepared to get these notes out, and they can find them very easily without searching. So by doing this exercise, it makes it super easy to play what's written, because you're not trying to find the notes. So I would focus on making sure each note is very relaxed and easy to find, and then that's going to make it so much easier to just do the scale down towards the end. That's about everything I have for this etude. If you have any more specific questions or thoughts, feel free to message me. All my contact information is on the White Settlement ISD band page. And if you'd like to take lessons, I would love to work with you. Feel free to send me a message and we can get that started. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a good day.